Good evening, and welcome to night 2. If you haven't watched night 1, I encourage you to stop watching this and go find night 1, because night 1 explains what we're doing here and why we're here. If you're watching this after the recording, I'm going to take 5 minutes. We're going to play a little bit of music until everybody gets on. Welcome. So welcome. This is night 2, equally as important as night 1, as well as night 5. As always, we're going to open with a spiritual drink. This is an invitation to all people and all things within our reality, an opportunity for us to invite those that we can see, as well as those that we cannot see, those that we are aware of, as well as those that we are not aware of. Tonight, for me, is again mead. Welcome to all and to everything. And a drink for you. And a drink for you. Tonight we'll be covering 4 areas of topics, just like last night. We'll be talking about 3 Hermetic laws. We'll be talking about 3 different parts of self. We'll be talking about a new meditation. Remember, not a bad word. And we'll be having we'll be talking about something to venerate. So, let's begin. The next 3 Hermetic laws that we're going to talk about. The first Hermetic law that we're going to talk about is the law of rhythm. The law of rhythm says that everything happens in a cycle, a rhythmic, predictable pattern, much like our heartbeat, right? What this does is this makes it possible for us to begin to predict what's going to happen next. If we're in a low spot, we know that that low spot is going to be followed with a spike, and that spike's going to create new opportunity. If we're not prepared for it, or if we're loathsome in that low spot, we may miss that opportunity for a spike and just stay in a low. So it's important that we prepare ourselves and even begin to invite that energy to create that spike. Because that spike's going to go above our norm and then drop back down to where our norm is. So it's important that we have the energy, the will, the endurance to carry beyond that spike. The second law we're going to talk about tonight is the law of polarity. The law of polarity simply states that everything that happens, that is, and that will be has a polar opposite to it. This is important for us to understand, because if we're experiencing one thing right now and we don't like it, the easiest way and the strongest way for us to get away from it is to find its polar opposite and to begin to venerate that energy. And boy, did I get dark. Here, let me scoot up a little bit. The fire isn't quite as bright as it was last night. There we go.
Jump around every few minutes and turn the light on.
So if we focus on the vibrational frequency, the resonation of the polar opposite of what we're experiencing, we will begin to pull away from that and begin to go towards its polarity, its polar opposite. So understanding the law of polarity is super valuable, because it's the first step in us changing the vibrational frequency that we're experiencing. Sadness can only be replaced with its polar opposite, joy. The more joy we bring into our life, the more sadness goes away. The next law we're going to talk about is the law of gender. Now, in the animal kingdom, gender comes across as our sex, or the animal's sex, male and female. And to some people, the idea of gender is a polar opposite. But this is not true. In fact, neither of them are true. For anything to exist in our reality, it must have both feminine and masculine energy. Okay? Otherwise, it cannot exist. Not in our reality. So, and they also aren't the polarities of each other. Masculine and feminine are complementary to each other. So in battle, the sword or the spear, or the tip of the spear, is the masculine energy, and the shield is the feminine energy. So in combat, they work together. And this is true in all things. In our own existence, if we are both masculine and feminine, then our rage is tempered by our feminine energy. So the goal would be to achieve a level of balance between our masculine and feminine selves. Masculine being giving, tip of the spear. Feminine being receiving energy. So when we begin to give and take in equal proportion, that is when our gender energy is in balance. The more we can give and take equally, the more in balance we become with our feminine and masculine selves. So those are the three laws that we're going to talk about, that we did talk about. Rhythm, super important, because we know everything's going to change, and there's a cycle, we can find it. Polarity, everything has a polar opposite. And gender, not our sex, but our actual energy. So let's talk about the three parts of self for tonight. The three parts of self for tonight actually give us the ability to learn beyond the now. So the first part of self that we're going to talk about is memory. This is part of the mind, but it's more than the mind, because it doesn't live inside of our head. Memory is unique in all things have some form of memory. If you're empathic, you can begin to exercise this by touching things. When you touch something, you get an image. You get a memory of that thing. Even though it's inanimate, it doesn't have a mind. We also can experience this with people, both living and dead, both new and old. So memory is something beyond what exists in our head. In fact, inside the body, most people hypothesize that memory exists in the gut rather than the head. And because if you stop and think about it, when you stop and think, you actually are drawn to something closer to your core rather than something in your head. So memory is the fourth part of self, separate from thought, because memory are old thoughts, not new thoughts. Memory could also be future thoughts that you capture in a memory setting. But that's in a class all by itself. The next part of self that has the ability to teach us is our spirit guide. Spirit guides are unique and easily mistaken. Spirit guides tend to be the opposite sexual gender than us, or an abstract object or animal. They do not tend to appear to be us or to be the same sex as us. Very seldom. If they do, odds are it's because our gender energies are a little messed up and they need to compensate. But our spirit guide helps us make decisions about the here and now, and to begin to provide us information about the future so that we can make decisions that impact our future the right way. They are also the ones who get in the way of our magic. When we are not aligned with our contract, our soul contract, it is our spirit guide who is the first to get in the way of things. Because they're our polar opposite and they're also our gender opposite, they have this ability to be more on track when we're off track. Well, because all things have an equal, the next part of self is the watcher. The watcher is usually the same gender as us and usually a parental energy. Somebody who reminds us of a grandparent or a great-grandparent, someone who has authority, who, when we disappoint them, we feel it everywhere, especially in our memories, especially in our gut. They're the ones who actually know our soul contract. They're the ones who helped us write that contract and will help us get back on track. So you can guess, they also have the ability to get in the way of our magic. While these two get together and are on track with our magic, that's already 20% of our self working against our working. So it might be a good idea to talk to these things, to build a relationship with these things, so that they can find a way to communicate to us whether or not we're going the right direction. So those are the three parts of self that we talked about tonight, that we covered tonight. The memory, the spirit guide, and the watcher. These are our teachers. It is with them that we can gain greater wisdom and achieve beyond where we are now. So let's talk about the meditation tonight. The meditation tonight's very unique. It is the stepping stone into the other world, the world of the spirits, the world that most of you may have seen, may have even encountered, but it is through this that you will actually begin to understand it and grasp what you're experiencing. This is the awareness meditation. The best time to do this meditation is in the morning, just as the sun comes up. The best place is somewhere outside in nature. You will do your mindful meditation. with your 4-4-4 breathing. This clears your mind, gets it out of your way so that you can actually begin to open yourself up. Then you will switch from the 4-4-4 breathing to a Wim Hof breathing method. That's Wim Hof. I can't spell it for you, but I will add a link in the comments by tomorrow to talk about it. But Wim Hof breathing technique is a deep inhale through your mouth, filling up your entire body with oxygen. That's from the very bottom of your torso all the way up to your mouth. Pushing it all out and then holding it for roughly the same amount of time. It's pretty close to 6 seconds once you get good at it. But it looks something like this. And after the third time, you stop breathing altogether. And you do not breathe until you absolutely have to. And then you allow yourself to go back to a natural breathing. Once you've entered the natural breathing, you begin to become aware. Focus your thoughts on your 5 senses. What can I see? What can I see that I couldn't see before? And how well can I see it? What can I hear? What can I hear that I could not hear before? And how well can I hear? What can I taste? What can I smell? What can I feel? Here in the now that I couldn't before. That lightheaded feeling that you'll experience doing the Wim Hof is part of the experience. Over-oxygenating your brain heightens your senses, makes them more in tune. What begins to happen in your awareness meditation is those 5 senses, and technically a 6th sense, that nobody can really explain, but it's there. It's a form of awareness that doesn't really have a word, but our consciousness is aware of it. That gives us more knowledge. And they begin to form a here and now picture that is greater than what we expect. Then we also gain the ability to take those 6 senses backwards to a place in time, or forwards to a place in time. And when we begin to achieve this in our awareness meditation, this is when we can control or be aware of what's coming or what has passed that we missed. Snipers in the military learn this exercise so that they can close their eyes and relive a moment and pick up the little things that occurred in a room that they missed. Okay? They can also use this to help predict movement in targets. This is super skillful and super important when you start to think about it in that terms. This will begin to create cognitive recognition of events that are about to occur. When you begin to live in this moment of awareness as you're driving, you can begin to predict speed traps. You can begin to predict light changes, traffic movements, all these things that would help you when you're driving. Linda Lee provided the name Wim Hof. Look him up. He has huge exercises. He's doing wonderful things with his breathing. But as you can do that, if you can do that while you're driving, imagine what you can do when you push those 6 senses forward in time to a given place, to a given event. You can already see the path that you have to take to achieve it because of your awareness. And all you're doing is being aware of everything that occurs to get there. So this is what you can do with the awareness meditation. The awareness meditation isn't to hear the birds, to see the veins in the trees, in the leaves, or in the grass. It isn't to count the bugs. It isn't to slow down a hummingbird's wings. But you can do those things with awareness meditation. But that's just breaking the surface of how much awareness you can gain by practicing the awareness meditation first, once a day, in the morning, outside, and then eventually in the most critical parts of your day and prior to conjure or magic work. So tonight was about knowledge, balance, which is required for knowledge, because if you don't have balance, you don't possess the fortitude to actually gain knowledge. I'm good now. The fire and that light's big enough.
Are you good?
Yeah. Okay. So tonight we're going to talk about venerating what I consider the second most important thing in our reality. So last night we talked about venerating self. But there's a whole pile of beings that made it possible for you to be here. Your ancestors. So without them, there would be no way for you to actually be here. And if you're not here, then there's no one to venerate you, because you don't exist. So it would make sense that the second thing that we venerate in our life would be our ancestors. Now, I tried to put a quantitative number on how many ancestors we have, and it's actually mathematically impossible. Okay? Because each generation requires 2 parents for each parent. So you have 2 parents, but those 2 parents each have 2 parents, and each 4 of those parents each have 2 parents. So it's a scientific notation that looks something like 305 to eternity times the power of 305 to eternity. Well, nobody has any idea what that number looks like. Okay? Take your favorite sports stadium and fill it with people. That's how many ancestors stand in your court and are willing to help you. That's a pretty big number. On average in the U.S., that's somewhere around 120,000 people. Individuals that had a direct hand in your existence and can live their immortal life through you when you venerate them. So they'd have a vested interest in you, into helping you, into listening to you, if you would simply sit down and have a drink with them. Eat a meal with them. Give them some fresh water or tea or coffee or alcohol. Whatever comes to mind, this is part of that awareness meditation. Whatever you can think of that resonates with you, offer it to them. Give them a space in your reality. If you have some indoctrination about having sex in a room with your grandparents, don't put them in your bedroom. If you don't have some dogmatic issue with having sex in a room where your grandparents are, then who cares if you put them in your bedroom? My people lived in one-room huts with 3 or 4 generations of people. So we don't have a problem with having sex in a room with other people in our family, because nobody's watching. They're all having sex except for the kids, and the kids know what we're doing because they see the animals do it.
Good God.
Okay? But recognize that your ancestors are super vital. And I'm going to stop speaking and let the car go by. So it would make sense to put them somewhere in your life where you want them. In our house, we have ancestral representation in every room of the house, every corner of the property to include the center of the property, and every outbuilding on the property. We wear things that are ancestrally connected, whether it's my hand axe, a piece of jewelry, a hair ribbon, or a hair tie. They're all connected to our ancient way that our ancestors did things. And I'm not talking 1 or 2 generations. 40,000 years if you're Northern European. Up to 180,000 years if you're African. There are African tribes today that date back over 180,000 years. That's a lot of generations. The average generation is 33 years. So that's a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of power, because each of them also had the 10 parts of self. Okay? So, super critical, super important. In conclusion, tonight we talked about cycles and we talked about knowledge and awareness. So the keynote is everything happens in a cycle. And it's getting dark. It's dark, so it's hard for me to read. So we have time to learn. If we missed it this go around and we're stuck because we didn't learn the experience, we'll get the opportunity to experience it again. Sometimes, even when we learned the first lesson, we'll still get the opportunity to experience again because there's more lessons that can be learned from the same experience. Right? Take fishing. You can cast 1,000 times, but each cast is different. And each type of rod and reel is different. So every cast, you have the power to learn from it, even after 1,000 casts. And on average, a good fisherman in an hour, if he's really working at it, probably casts 50 or 60 times. That's 1 cast a minute. So you could spend a lifetime fishing, and that's hundreds of thousands of casts. I'm 48 years old, and every time I cast, and I've been fishing since I was 6, every time I cast, I learn something new. Just on the cast. So why would something so mundane as casting a line out in the water provide such a learning experience if the big things in our life also didn't provide big learning experiences? Just because you're reliving a cycle over and over doesn't mean it's penance, doesn't mean it's suffering. Maybe that's your soul contract, is to experience that thing over and over and over, to learn everything about it. So stop fighting it. Stop fighting the bad things and the hard things in life and embrace them, because you have time. Once you've learned everything that there is to learn there, there'll be a new lesson, a new challenge. Take a look at your past. Think about what weakens you and what makes you stronger. Analyze, be mindful of these things, and begin to reword your narrative so that those things that are weaknesses become strengths. And those strengths become even stronger and more rooted in who you are. Use this knowledge that you're gaining through these 2 meditations and through the Hermetic laws and through the parts of self. Because the 10 parts of self, when they are all in balance, makes you a 100% being. If one of those 10 parts aren't in balance, then you go from being an A student to a B or a C student or an F student. Think about how fast that percentage drops if there's only 10 things. 2 things and now you're only at 80% at best. So use as much as you possibly can by getting all of these parts of self in balance, recognizing all of these Hermetic laws as part of your metaphysical reality. Because unlike the Wiccan laws or the Bible laws, these aren't laws telling you what's right and wrong. These are laws telling you what's possible based off of the metaphysical, irrefutable parts of our reality. The law of polarity doesn't say good and bad. It says there is a polar opposite for everything. That polar opposite gives you opportunity, not restrictions. The law of gender doesn't say you have to be a boy. It doesn't say anything about your sexual preference. It says you are both masculine and feminine in energy, and you have to learn how to use both because both are equally important within your metaphysical reality. This is the key that unlocks the door to the core of your magic. Again, I thank you for joining me. Miss Shaw thanks you.
Thank you, baby.
And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.